Hello everyone, welcome to Sleep Space. Tonight we will talk about a fascinating question, one that challenges how we think about reality itself. Are we stuck in a timeless loop? As you settle in, let your mind relax and let curiosity guide you through this idea. Because tonight we'll step away from the ordinary flow of time and explore the scientific possibility that the universe, and perhaps even your life, may not be moving forward at all. We experience time as something that flows. Seconds tick away, days pass, and we move from one moment to the next. But physics tells a very different story. At the most fundamental level, time might not flow at all. In fact, it might not even exist in the way we imagine. What we perceive as motion through time could be an illusion, the result of consciousness moving across a landscape that is already fully formed. Einstein once said, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." His theories of relativity showed us that time is woven together with space into a single four-dimensional fabric, space-time. In this fabric, all events, every heartbeat, every star explosion, every word you will ever speak, already exist. Nothing is moving, nothing is changing. It's all there, all at once, like frames on a film reel. The feeling that we move through those frames is the illusion. Imagine a reel of film. Each frame is a frozen image, but when you play them quickly, the still images create motion. Our experience of time may be the same. Consciousness perceiving still slices of the universe, one after another, giving the impression of a flowing present. But in truth, there may be no flow, only a static, eternal block of existence. This idea is known as the block universe, a model in physics that treats time as just another dimension of space. Just as all points in space exist simultaneously, all moments in time do too. From this perspective, the past is still there, the future already exists, and what we call the present is simply the slice of reality we happen to be aware of. But if all moments exist at once, it raises a haunting question. Are we truly moving forward, or are we looping endlessly through the same pattern, unaware that it's already complete? To a conscious observer trapped within time, the loop might appear to be motion, but from outside of time, it could look like stillness, like an infinite picture, repeating itself because it was never changing to begin with. Modern physics hints at this stillness. The fundamental equations that describe the universe, from Einstein's relativity to quantum mechanics, don't require time to flow. They work just as well in both directions. There's nothing in those equations that defines a now or demands a forward march from past to future. The arrow of time we experience, from birth to death, from cause to effect, emerges from something else entirely: entropy. Entropy is the measure of disorder in a system, and according to the second law of thermodynamics, entropy tends to increase. That's why a cup of hot coffee cools down, why stars burn out, why we remember the past, but not the future. The universe appears to move from order to disorder, from simplicity to complexity. This gives us our sense of direction, our feeling that time is moving forward. But here's the twist. Entropy doesn't actually prove that time flows. It only tells us that within the block universe, one side of the timeline has lower entropy and the other has higher entropy. The flow we perceive might be nothing more than our consciousness traveling across that gradient, a mental phenomenon born from the structure of memory and thermodynamics. So if consciousness is what moves, if it's the thing giving shape to the illusion of time, could we be trapped in a kind of loop? A loop not of physical repetition, but of perception, replaying an eternal structure from the inside. It's an idea that physicists and philosophers alike have wrestled with for decades. The universe might be a vast, unchanging four-dimensional object, and what you call your life might simply be one continuous thread within that structure. You're not traveling through time, you're a pattern extended across space-time. Every thought, every memory, every version of you, they all exist simultaneously along your timeline. And if that's true, then from a certain perspective, you're not stuck in time at all. You are time. You're part of the geometry of the universe itself, a living curve through the space-time fabric. You might feel like you're moving from moment to moment, but from the outside, your entire life could be seen at once, like a sculpture carved into reality. Yet, this still leaves one question unanswered. If time doesn't move and everything already exists, why do we feel it flowing? Why do we remember the past but not the future? Why does consciousness seem to ride on a one-way current? Scientists have suggested that our brains build the illusion of time's passage by constantly predicting what will happen next. The brain is a prediction engine, always comparing new sensory input to memory and expectation. When the pattern of change matches those expectations, we perceive the flow of time. Without that neural rhythm, the universe might appear frozen. As you drift into stillness tonight, imagine that every second of your existence is already laid out, not vanishing into the past, not waiting in the future, but existing eternally, right here. Time may not be something you pass through, but something that is written into you. And maybe, just maybe, this loop we sense isn't a trap at all, but a structure. The structure of the cosmos itself, perfectly balanced between the illusion of motion and the reality of timelessness. If time does not truly flow, then what we call change must be something else entirely. It might not be the universe itself that changes, but our perspective within it. Imagine standing in front of a vast mural, one that stretches far beyond your field of view. You can only see a small section at a time. As you shift your gaze, different parts come into focus, and to you, it feels as though the mural is changing. But in reality, it's your attention that's moving, not the painting itself. This may be how our consciousness interacts with space-time. Each moment we experience is like a small window into the larger whole, a tiny slice of a much greater picture. And just as you cannot see the entire mural at once, you cannot experience every point of your timeline simultaneously. You move, or rather, your awareness moves, through those slices, one after another. But what if that movement is cyclical? What if your consciousness, after reaching the end of its timeline, loops back to the beginning, unaware that it's repeating the same trajectory again? Physicists call this concept closed time-like curves. In certain solutions to Einstein's equations, such loops are mathematically possible. They describe paths through space-time that eventually lead back to their own starting points, creating the possibility of an eternal return. One of the most famous examples is the Gödel universe, proposed by mathematician Kurt Gödel in 1949. Gödel discovered a solution to Einstein's equations that described a rotating universe in which time itself curves back upon itself. In such a universe, if you traveled far enough, you could return not just to the same place, but to the same moment. Though we don't believe our universe behaves exactly this way, Gödel's discovery revealed something profound. The laws of physics don't forbid loops in time. The equations that describe our cosmos allow for universes where the concept of before and after breaks down completely. But what would it mean to exist inside such a loop? Would you be aware of the repetition? Would consciousness carry any memory of the last cycle? Or would each loop feel entirely new, as if it were happening for the first time? Here's where it gets fascinating. from within the loop, you might never know. Each moment contains its own version of you, complete with memories and experiences that seem to stretch into a coherent past. But those memories would only exist within that slice of space-time. The you in the next cycle would be identical, yet entirely unaware that it's not the first time this life has played out. In this view, the universe could be timeless and looping, yet from our internal perspective, it still feels linear and unfolding. It's a kind of cosmic illusion where consciousness moves along the same groove, believing each pass to be new. Some physicists and philosophers have extended this logic further, suggesting that our perception of time's flow might not just be a byproduct of entropy, but a necessary illusion for consciousness to exist at all. Our brains are designed to perceive change, to track cause and effect, to orient ourselves within a story. Without this internal sense of temporal flow, awareness might collapse into something incomprehensible, a single, static flash of existence without sequence or meaning. So maybe the timeless loop isn't something trapping us, but something sustaining us. A structure that allows awareness to unfold within a universe that at its core does not move. In quantum physics, this idea takes on even stranger implications. When scientists look at the fundamental equations describing particles and waves, they notice something striking. Time often disappears from the mathematics. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, a key concept in attempts to unify quantum mechanics and general relativity, does not contain time as a variable at all. In that sense, the universe described by quantum gravity is frozen. Everything just is. But that can't be the whole story, because we experience change. We age, we remember, we anticipate. So physicists like Carlo Rovelli have proposed that time might be emergent, not fundamental, but something that arises from the relationships between things. Time, in this sense, could be like temperature. Temperature doesn't exist for a single particle. It's a property that only appears when many particles interact. In the same way, time may emerge only when many systems interact and exchange information. If time is emergent, then it could, in theory, vanish in regions of the universe where those interactions stop, like deep inside a black hole, or at the quantum level of space-time itself. There, the concept of before and after may lose all meaning. And if time can vanish in one region, perhaps it can loop in another. Some cosmologists have proposed that the universe itself could be cyclical, expanding, collapsing, and rebirthing endlessly. The Big Bang might not have been a true beginning, but simply the latest crest in an infinite cycle of cosmic expansion and contraction. If that's the case, then everything that's ever happened, or will happen, may already be encoded in the structure of space-time, repeating through vast cosmic rhythms. Galaxies, stars, and life itself might rise and fall in endless patterns, unaware of the loop they're part of. And within that grand cycle, the human mind, this fleeting pocket of self-awareness, might simply trace its own smaller loops. Each thought, each heartbeat, each life unfolding according to the geometry of the universe, repeating eternally in the stillness of space-time. If time is not fundamental and our sense of motion through it is merely perception, then the question becomes, what exactly is doing the perceiving? What is consciousness in this timeless picture of reality? Because if the universe is static, frozen as a four-dimensional block of space-time, then consciousness must be something that moves, or at least seems to move, across that block, giving rise to the illusion of flow. Let's imagine for a moment that consciousness is not confined to the present moment as we assume. Instead, it might be more like a scanning light, moving through the timeline of your existence, illuminating one frame at a time. Each frame already exists, unchanging and eternal, but awareness makes it feel alive. The past, the future, and every possibility between are already written, but consciousness brings attention to one slice, creating the experience we call now. But this raises a profound puzzle. If every moment already exists, then why is consciousness only aware of one moment at a time? Why can't we access all points of our timeline simultaneously? Why is the experience of time linear, if time itself isn't? Neuroscience suggests that the illusion of linear time is a byproduct of how the brain processes information. The brain doesn't experience reality in real time. It's constantly predicting and stitching moments together. Every sensory experience you have, every sound, image, or thought is actually delayed by a fraction of a second as the brain integrates signals from different senses. It then creates a coherent, present moment by aligning them into a single flow. Your mind is, quite literally, assembling time. It's not perceiving an external stream, it's constructing one internally from fragments of memory and prediction. What feels like a smooth, unbroken flow is the brain's best guess about what's happening. This internal assembly may be the mechanism that turns a timeless reality into a lived experience. You could think of it as a projection, the mind painting motion onto a still universe. If that's true, then what we call the flow of time is not something out there, but something the brain produces to make sense of a static cosmos. Now consider what that means for your personal identity. If your life is already a fixed path in space-time, if every thought, every decision, every experience is already encoded along that curve, then what we call free will may simply be how it feels from the inside of that path. You don't choose the next moment, you experience it as if you do. To the external observer, one capable of seeing the entire block universe at once, your life would appear as a single, beautiful pattern, beginning, middle, and end, all existing together. There would be no before or after, no waiting, no anticipation, only the full shape of what you are. Yet from within that structure, consciousness experiences it sequentially, moment by moment, like reading a book one line at a time. You can't skip ahead because your awareness is confined to each page as it unfolds, but all the pages already exist. Some physicists and philosophers call this the illusion of passage. It's not that you're moving through time, it's that your awareness of each moment gives rise to the feeling of motion. Consciousness could be like a needle playing across the grooves of a record. The music exists all at once on the record, but you only hear it as the needle moves. The motion isn't in the record, it's in the playback. But here's where things take a strange turn. If consciousness is the playback mechanism, the thing that reads the timeline, then what happens when it reaches the end? Does the awareness simply stop? Or could it loop back to the beginning and start the track again, experiencing the same life, the same moments, the same choices, all over again? This idea isn't just metaphysical speculation. In physics, the concept of Poincaré recurrence suggests that given enough time, any closed system will eventually return to a state arbitrarily close to its original one. The universe, according to some cosmological models, could eventually cycle through the same configurations, meaning that every event, every life, could repeat endlessly. Now, in the timeless block view, recurrence isn't something that happens over time. It's simply part of the static geometry. There isn't an infinite series of lives playing one after another. There is only the structure of endless return built into the very fabric of reality. It's not that you live the same life again. It's that your life is one of infinitely repeating patterns embedded in the universe's architecture. And if consciousness rides those patterns, if awareness somehow attaches to the structure of space-time, then in a sense, you could be stuck in a timeless loop without even knowing it. Each iteration feels new, yet it's simply the same trajectory of awareness replayed across the same eternal form. But that idea also opens a door to something even more profound. If all versions of time coexist, if every possible frame of your life is already out there in space-time, then your awareness doesn't just travel one path. It could, in principle, have access to the entire structure, if it were not bound by the illusion of sequence. Quantum mechanics hints at this flexibility. The quantum world doesn't respect the strict order of past and future as we do. In experiments involving entanglement and delayed choice, particles appear to respond to events that haven't yet happened, as though the future can influence the past. These experiments suggest that, at a fundamental level, reality does not obey our familiar, linear notion of time. Physicist John Wheeler famously proposed the participatory universe, the idea that observation plays a role in shaping reality, not just in the present, but across time. According to this view, the universe is not a fixed stage, but a self-consistent web of interactions that includes both observer and observed. What you perceive as now may help define what has always been. So what if consciousness is not bound to one direction of time at all? What if it's a process that threads through space-time, capable at some level of interacting with all its points simultaneously? From within, it experiences that as linear progression, but from outside, it's an all-at-once phenomenon, a timeless awareness scanning the landscape of reality. In this picture, the loop isn't something that traps you. It's the pattern of your existence, eternally inscribed in the geometry of the cosmos. Consciousness gives it motion, awareness gives it meaning, but the loop itself, the structure of your timeline, is unchanging. Maybe being stuck isn't the right word at all. Maybe in a timeless universe, being part of the loop means you're woven into eternity, a continuous, repeating thread in the cosmic design, forever existing, forever whole. If the universe is timeless, then everything that has ever happened and ever will happen exists right now, frozen into the geometry of space-time. But if that's true, it forces us to question the very nature of cause and effect. Because in a timeless universe, what does it mean for one thing to cause another? If all moments coexist, how can one event lead to the next when next doesn't truly exist? Our intuition tells us that causes come before effects, that a match must be struck before it ignites. But physics, when examined closely, doesn't actually enforce this order. The equations describing electromagnetism, gravity, and quantum mechanics are time-symmetric. They don't care which way time moves. The math works the same forward or backward. The only reason we think of time as moving forward is because we're living in a universe where entropy, disorder, increases. That increase gives the illusion of a before and after. You strike the match, the flame bursts, and heat dissipates into the air. Entropy rises, and so we sense that one thing led to another. But within the block universe, all of those events, the unlit match, the strike, the flame, and the fading smoke, exist simultaneously. The cause and the effect are just 2 points on a single, unchanging structure. This means that the relationship between past and future might not be linear at all. It might be more like a web, with information, energy, and structure influencing each other across the entire network of space-time. Some physicists even argue that the future can shape the past just as much as the past shapes the future. This idea, known as retrocausality, appears in certain interpretations of quantum mechanics. In some quantum experiments, particles behave as if decisions made in the present can influence outcomes in the past. It's not that the particles are changing history, it's that the universe seems to arrange itself in a self-consistent way across time. The entire pattern, past, present, and future, fits together like the pieces of a completed puzzle. Think of it this way: if time is a loop, then every part of the loop must fit together perfectly for the structure to exist. There can be no contradictions, no loose ends. The past and future don't chase each other. They define each other. The loop sustains itself, eternally consistent. That could mean the universe is not a story being written, but a story already written. A narrative that includes both the writing and the reading, the cause and the effect, all intertwined in one seamless whole. From the outside, it's a perfect, self-contained pattern. From the inside, it feels like unfolding experience. This view is sometimes called superdeterminism. It suggests that everything in the universe, every event, every choice, every observation, is part of one pre-existing structure that could not have been any other way. There are no true coincidences, no alternate possibilities. Even your awareness of making a decision is part of that structure, an integral feature of the pattern. To many, this sounds unsettling. If everything is fixed, if every thought and action is already woven into the fabric of space-time, then what becomes of freedom? What becomes of agency? But perhaps freedom isn't about changing the structure. Perhaps it's about experiencing it. Within a timeless framework, you're not controlling the flow. You're participating in the unfolding. You are the observer walking through the painting, the reader moving through the story, the consciousness tracing a path across the geometry of being. Einstein once described himself as a determinist, but he also believed that human experience of choice and moral responsibility was essential. He saw no contradiction, because from within time we experience uncertainty. We don't know the future, and that ignorance creates the lived feeling of freedom. The fact that the outcome is already encoded in space-time doesn't lessen the experience of choosing. It's similar to watching a movie you've seen before. The ending is fixed, but the emotions are still real. You still hope, you still fear, you still feel. The experience is authentic, even if the path is predetermined. Some scientists, like theoretical physicist Julian Barber, have gone further. Barber argues that time doesn't exist at all, that the universe is made of a series of nows. Each now is a complete configuration of the entire cosmos, an arrangement of every atom, every galaxy, every mind. There's no motion between them, no flow, just a collection of timeless moments. Consciousness, in this view, is what creates the illusion of continuity between those nows. Barber calls this landscape Platonia. In Platonia, all moments exist eternally, but there's no objective order to them. The flow of time, the sense of direction, is something our minds impose upon these static snapshots. We remember certain configurations as past because they contain records, imprints of other configurations. But the record and the event it refers to both exist simultaneously. From this perspective, you are not moving through life. Life is a tapestry of frozen configurations, and your awareness drifts from one to another, weaving a story as it goes. The order you perceive might simply be the path your consciousness takes through the timeless landscape. But what guides that path? Why does your awareness move through some moments and not others? Why this life, this sequence, this experience? That remains one of the deepest mysteries of consciousness and physics. Some theories suggest that consciousness itself could be a process that connects these timeless configurations. That your mind, your awareness, is the stitching that links the moments into a sequence, giving birth to time as a lived experience. If that's true, then consciousness is not bound within time. It is what creates time. This flips our ordinary understanding completely. You are not a creature living in time. Time is a construct emerging from your consciousness. The loop you may feel trapped in might not be a cosmic prison, but a reflection of your own awareness continuously generating the sense of passage. And if that's the case, then timelessness isn't something to escape. It's the true nature of reality. The loop is not confinement, it's structure. It's the rhythm of existence, sustained by the act of perception itself. Maybe what we call the passage of time is the cosmos remembering itself, consciousness tracing and retracing the same eternal pattern, illuminating what was always there. If time and change are illusions born from perception, then the next mystery becomes, why does the illusion persist so perfectly? Why does reality seem so convincingly alive, so continuous, when beneath it all, the universe may be standing still? To understand that, we have to look more deeply into how physics and consciousness might be linked, and how our brains could be tuned to translate a timeless reality into the feeling of motion and life. In quantum physics, everything we observe exists as a superposition of possibilities, multiple outcomes coexisting in potential. Only when observation occurs does that cloud of possibilities seem to collapse into a single result. But if the universe is fundamentally timeless, then perhaps there is no real collapse. Instead, all outcomes exist eternally, side by side, in the structure of space-time itself. Observation doesn't create a moment, it simply locates consciousness within one of many fixed possibilities. This is part of what's known as the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It proposes that every quantum event splits the universe into branches, not over time, but across a timeless structure. All outcomes exist. We simply inhabit one path through the branching web. What feels like the future unfolding may be nothing more than our awareness moving through that already existing network, tracing a route through infinite variations of the cosmos. But consciousness is selective. The human mind filters reality, ignoring the overwhelming sea of data that surrounds it. Our brains are pattern recognition engines, wired to detect order and change. It's possible that our experience of a flowing timeline is a way to simplify a reality too complex to comprehend all at once. The mind reduces an infinite static landscape into a manageable narrative, a moving picture of moments stitched together by memory. Memory is crucial here. Without it, the illusion of time collapses. Imagine waking up with no recollection of yesterday, no sense of continuity, no expectation of tomorrow. The world would appear as a series of disconnected instants, each existing in isolation, in a way that might be closer to how the universe truly is, timeless and complete. But consciousness, through memory, builds a thread between moments. It constructs before and after. It transforms timeless configurations into a story. From this viewpoint, you are not remembering the past as much as you are re-experiencing it. Memory might not be a recording stored in your brain, but a mechanism that reactivates the relevant part of your space-time pattern. When you recall an event, you're not reaching backward through time. You're aligning awareness with the region of space-time where that event exists. The connection gives rise to the sensation of recollection, even though all those moments still coexist. This would explain why the brain uses such vast energy resources for memory and prediction. It's not just storing data, it's maintaining the illusion of temporal continuity, stitching together static frames into a living movie. The energy spent sustaining that illusion is the cost of consciousness operating within a timeless world. But if consciousness is the mechanism that animates the still universe, what is it made of? Where does it come from? This is where physics and philosophy collide. Some researchers propose that consciousness might be an emergent property of complex systems, a result of interactions among countless particles and signals. Others suspect it could be more fundamental, woven into the fabric of space-time itself, like charge or spin, a basic property of the universe, not a product of it. If consciousness is fundamental, it might not exist within time at all. Instead, it could exist outside of time, perceiving the universe as a complete whole. What we experience as being alive in time could then be the process of this timeless consciousness focusing on one region of space-time, then another, scanning through the eternal landscape frame by frame. That perspective also opens the door to the possibility that consciousness can move in directions we cannot currently perceive. We experience the arrow of time moving forward, but if consciousness is not bound by that arrow, then it might be capable of perceiving, or even accessing, moments that we call the future or the past. This idea isn't just speculation, it arises naturally from physics. The fundamental equations describing the universe work equally well in reverse. From their standpoint, there is no preferred direction. The universe is symmetric. So what creates the illusion of a single direction? Again, entropy, the gradual increase of disorder, seems to dictate it, but entropy doesn't forbid a reverse journey. In fact, at microscopic levels, particles occasionally defy the arrow of time, moving backward according to our definition. These are rare, fleeting events, but they remind us that time's direction is not absolute. It's an emergent pattern, a large-scale property of the universe. This hints at something incredible. If consciousness is linked to quantum processes, as some theories suggest, then it may occasionally touch the edges of that symmetry. Dreams, intuition, déjà vu, all could be glimpses of the mind brushing against regions of space-time that lie outside its usual temporal path. In those moments, awareness might briefly sense the timeless nature of reality before the illusion of flow reasserts itself. But that idea also brings us back to the concept of the loop. If all moments exist eternally and consciousness can only traverse them in one direction at a time, then looping may simply be what happens when awareness replays a fixed path. Just as your brain replays experiences in memory, perhaps the universe itself replays certain conscious trajectories, not because they move, but because the structure of space-time and awareness naturally overlap in that pattern. The more we explore this possibility, the more we realize that being stuck in a timeless loop may not be a punishment or mistake. It could be the fundamental nature of existence, a self-referential system that sustains itself by perceiving itself. Consciousness experiences time because it must, in order to recognize itself within the static universe. Without the loop, there would be no awareness, no narrative, no meaning. It might be that the entire universe, from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy, participates in this self-perception. The cosmos could be one vast, eternal feedback loop, observing itself through countless conscious forms, each experiencing a tiny portion of the timeless whole. If consciousness is the thread that weaves still moments into a living sequence, then what we call time may not exist outside of us at all. It may be the most intimate creation of the mind, a byproduct of awareness attempting to make sense of change. In this view, time is not a river flowing past you, but a map you draw as you experience existence. And the map is never complete, because consciousness keeps sketching it in real time. From a biological standpoint, perception itself is never instantaneous. Every sound you hear, every image you see, every sensation that reaches your brain is already slightly delayed. It takes time for light to hit your eyes, for sound waves to reach your ears, for neurons to transmit signals and the brain to interpret them. Yet you never feel this lag. You experience the world as immediate and continuous. Your mind seamlessly compensates for the delay, predicting what should be happening a few fractions of a second in the future, and blending that with what it just processed from the past. This constant predictive stitching is what creates your sense of now. Neuroscientists call it the specious present, a window of time, usually a few seconds wide, that your consciousness treats as the present moment. Everything you perceive as happening right now is actually the brain merging a small slice of the recent past with the prediction of the near future. It's a remarkable balancing act. Your brain is not just observing reality, it's simulating it continuously. The rhythm of that simulation is what produces the feeling of movement through time. Without it, you would perceive the world as disjointed flashes, unconnected fragments of existence. You would be aware, but there would be no continuity, no before or after, only isolated moments. This illusion is so fundamental to being conscious that it's almost impossible to notice it, but experiments in neuroscience reveal its limits. When scientists expose people to carefully timed sequences of images or sounds, they can trick the brain into perceiving motion or continuity where none exists. Two lights blinking in succession appear as one light moving back and forth. A static image flashed quickly between two positions feels like smooth animation. The mind invents motion to explain change, because motion is easier to perceive than disconnection. This tendency extends to time itself. Your brain fills the gaps between discrete neural events with the story of a continuous you. The sense of moving through time is, in part, the brain's interpretation of change. Not change in the world, but change in your own state of awareness. When you remember something, the neural pattern that encodes that memory becomes active again, nearly identical to the state it had when the memory was first formed. In that moment, the past is not recalled, it's reinstated. Your mind literally revisits the neural configuration of that previous moment. You could say that, in memory, consciousness loops backward through itself, and yet you experience it as recollection, not time travel. This gives us an extraordinary clue. The loop might not exist in the universe at large. It might exist in the mind. The way consciousness revisits, replays, and reinterprets moments could be a microcosm of the timeless loop at the cosmic level. When you recall the past, you are not moving backward in physical time, but you are folding the structure of your inner experience upon itself. The brain has built-in rhythms that may anchor this loop-like behavior. Neural oscillations, the rhythmic firing patterns of brain cells, synchronize perception, thought, and emotion. Every state of mind, from deep sleep to intense focus, corresponds to specific brainwave frequencies. These oscillations create temporal structure within consciousness, defining how long a moment lasts, how quickly you can process change, and how you perceive causality. Some researchers have proposed that consciousness itself is these oscillations, or rather, the dynamic patterns that arise from their synchronization. If so, then awareness is inherently cyclical. Each second of perception could be the crest of countless overlapping waves, endlessly looping, merging, and reshaping into new patterns. In a very literal sense, you experience reality as a sequence of loops, neural, perceptual, and cognitive. And yet, despite these cycles, you experience continuity. That continuity might be the brain's way of smoothing over the loops, hiding the seams between each oscillation. If the mind didn't do this, you'd sense time as a series of stutters, brief bursts of awareness separated by microseconds of absence. Some neurologists believe this may be happening anyway, but at a scale too small for us to detect. Consciousness could be like a film reel running at such high speed that it feels like a continuous flow. If that's true, then your experience of reality is the ultimate illusion of motion, the mind replaying still frames of the universe fast enough to create the sensation of living in time. The timeless loop, then, wouldn't just be cosmic, it would be neurological. Each of us carries that loop within the brain structure, recreating it moment by moment. But here's the deeper mystery. Why does consciousness need this illusion at all? Why not simply exist in the timeless stillness that physics suggests is real? Perhaps because awareness, by its very nature, requires contrast. To know anything, to recognize, perceive, or feel, there must be difference. A timeless universe in which everything simply is offers no difference, no contrast, no motion. Without motion, there can be no awareness of change, and therefore no experience of being conscious. Time may be the necessary illusion that allows consciousness to know itself. In this view, the loop is not a flaw or a prison, it's a feature. The mind creates time as a feedback system. It experiences change to confirm its own existence. You could say that awareness uses the illusion of time the way the universe uses gravity to hold its structure together. Even your emotions might be tied to this process. Anticipation and nostalgia, your awareness of the future and the past, are emotional responses to the movement of the loop. Anxiety, excitement, regret, longing, all are reflections of consciousness resisting its own timeless nature, clinging to the illusion of flow. The loop feels like life itself because it generates the very texture of living. Modern neuroscience supports this view more than we might expect. Studies on brain activity show that the regions responsible for processing sensory input overlap significantly with those responsible for imagining, predicting, and remembering. The brain treats perception and imagination as nearly identical processes. What you perceive out there and what you recall or anticipate in here are built from the same neural ingredients. The brain doesn't just sense the world, it constructs it. If the brain constructs space and time from neural activity, then your experience of the universe is literally a mental model, a simulation running inside consciousness. And because the simulation must be consistent, it creates the illusion of continuous time to stabilize perception. You might think you are observing a world that exists outside of you, but the continuity you feel is an artifact of the mind keeping its own story coherent. This coherence is fragile. In cases of brain injury, trauma, or certain altered states, the illusion of time can break down. People report feeling as though moments are frozen, stretched, or repeated endlessly. Some describe a state where everything happens at once, an overwhelming simultaneity that defies the ordinary sense of sequence. For those few moments, they glimpse a reality closer to the timeless universe that physics describes. Such experiences suggest that the flow of time is not fundamental to reality, but to experience. The loop exists only as long as consciousness does. When awareness ceases, in deep sleep, anesthesia, or death, time disappears entirely. Not because it ends, but because it was never there to begin with. If consciousness generates time, and time is the structure through which consciousness perceives itself, then perhaps the two are inseparable. They form a self-sustaining cycle. Awareness creates time, and time allows awareness to exist as experience. Each depends on the other in a perfect symmetry, looping endlessly. This symmetry could even explain why consciousness feels both personal and universal. The individual mind experiences its own private version of time, a rhythm shaped by its biology and perception, yet those rhythms align with the physical cycles of the universe. The heartbeat, the the rotation of the Earth, the orbits of planets, the oscillation of atoms. It's as if the microcosm of your mind is tuned to the same frequencies as the cosmos itself. Both are expressions of the same looping structure, reflected across scales. When physicists talk about timelessness, they often describe it as static, cold, and absolute. But when consciousness enters that equation, the picture changes. The timeless becomes dynamic again. Not because it moves, but because it knows itself. The act of knowing creates the illusion of passage, and the illusion of passage gives meaning to the knowing. It's a closed system, infinitely reflecting itself. If you could somehow step outside that system, if you could observe your entire consciousness from beyond time, you might see your life not as a journey, but as a single pattern, a shimmering, multidimensional loop of thought, emotion, and experience existing all at once. Every memory, every possibility, every version of you would coexist in that pattern. The you who wonders about the past and the you who imagines the future are simply different coordinates on that timeless design. You might even realize that what you call the future isn't something that hasn't happened yet. It's simply the part of your pattern your awareness hasn't illuminated. Just as a flashlight reveals one section of a sculpture at a time, your consciousness moves across the structure of your own existence, revealing one moment, then the next. The sculpture never changes, only the light moves. And perhaps that's what eternity really is. Not endless duration, but unchanging completeness. The universe doesn't need time to persist, it simply is. Consciousness, the perceiver within that stillness, generates motion by observing it. The loop, then, isn't a flaw in the design. It's the dance of stillness and awareness, forever creating the story of time within a universe that never truly changes. If you were to remove that loop, if consciousness could somehow stop experiencing the passage of time, what would remain? Perhaps pure awareness, unanchored to sequence, unbounded by memory or anticipation. That might be the true timeless state, the one physics describes and mystics allude to, where all moments exist as one. But maybe that's too much for the human mind to hold. So instead, we live within the loop. We perceive motion, we build stories, we fall in love with the illusion of before and after. And through that illusion, we experience meaning. Time, then, may be the greatest creative act of consciousness. The mechanism by which awareness explores itself, discovering endless beauty within the eternal stillness of being. The more we study consciousness, the more it seems to mirror the cosmos. Both appear infinite in scale, mysterious in origin, and governed by patterns that loop endlessly. It's as though awareness and the universe are two reflections of the same structure, observing each other across the boundary of perception. What happens in the human mind might not be separate from what happens in the fabric of space-time. It may be the same process, viewed from two different vantage points. In physics, time is not something that flows. It is a dimension, just like space. Einstein showed us that past, present, and future all coexist within the structure of space-time, forming a four-dimensional whole often called the block universe. In this model, everything that has ever happened and will ever happen already exists, laid out like frames on a cosmic film reel. What we call the passage of time is simply the way consciousness moves through this structure, experiencing one frame at a time. If that's true, then the universe itself doesn't evolve. We do. The act of observing reality could be what gives it its apparent motion. Each conscious observer might function like a projector, lighting up one frame after another from the timeless reel of existence. The film itself never changes, but the experience of watching it does. This raises a profound possibility. Maybe the universe needs observers to exist as a dynamic reality, In quantum mechanics, observation collapses probabilities into definite outcomes. Until a measurement occurs, particles exist in a cloud of potential states. The moment an observer interacts with them, that cloud resolves into something specific, an event, a position, a fact. This is often misunderstood as if human consciousness creates reality, but it may be subtler than that. Observation could be the mechanism through which the universe recognizes itself, the process by which timeless potential becomes experienced actuality. In that sense, consciousness and the cosmos might be partners in an eternal feedback loop. The universe generates conscious observers, and those observers, in turn, generate the experience of a universe in time. When we look at the night sky, we're seeing light that has travelled across millions or billions of years. Some of those stars no longer exist, yet their light still reaches us. We're literally seeing the past. But because the speed of light limits how information travels, there's no universal now that applies everywhere. Each point in the cosmos experiences its own present, defined by its own frame of reference. Time is relative, personal even. That relativity hints at something remarkable. If every point in space has its own time, then maybe consciousness, which also experiences time subjectively, is not an anomaly but a continuation of that cosmic principle. Perhaps awareness is the localized version of the universe's own timeless symmetry, folded into the fabric of matter so it can experience itself in fragments. Think of the universe as a grand consciousness field, timeless and complete, that expresses itself through countless local observers. Each conscious being is like a prism refracting the same white light of awareness into a unique color, a distinct experience of time, memory, and identity. The loop we live in, the sensation of past and future, may be the way this universal awareness experiences itself in motion. From this perspective, you are not separate from the cosmos. You are a pattern within it, a temporary alignment of energy and information that allows the universe to witness itself from your point of view. Every perception you have is, in a sense, the universe perceiving itself. Every thought, every sensation, every breath is the infinite becoming aware of its own detail. Science gives us glimpses of this pattern everywhere. Consider entropy, the measure of disorder in a system. The second law of thermodynamics tells us that entropy always increases over time, giving direction to the arrow of time. It's the reason a glass can shatter but not reassemble, why memories form in one direction but not the other. Entropy defines the forward motion of experience. Yet even entropy has a counterpart, information. Every act of observation reduces uncertainty. It brings order out of possibility. When a conscious mind perceives the world, it extracts meaning from chaos. You could say that consciousness is entropy's mirror image. While the physical universe trends toward disorder, awareness trends toward structure. The two processes may balance each other perfectly, forming a loop between chaos and clarity, between matter and mind. Some physicists, like John Wheeler, once suggested that the universe is fundamentally participatory, that the presence of observers is woven into its very structure. He proposed what he called the participatory anthropic principle, the idea that the universe is in some way compelled to bring forth consciousness, because consciousness is required to make the universe real. In his famous phrase, the universe observes itself. In that view, the loop isn't just in your mind, it's built into reality itself. The universe gives rise to conscious beings, who then give rise to the concept of the universe. Each depends on the other for meaning. It's a circular causality, a timeless feedback system that may have no true beginning or end. If that sounds abstract, imagine this. At the instant of the Big Bang, the universe wasn't just creating matter and energy, it was also setting the conditions for the eventual emergence of awareness. Consciousness may not have appeared billions of years later by accident. It may have been implicit from the start, encoded into the laws of physics themselves. The cosmos could be a vast consciousness loop unfolding across scales, from the quantum to the cosmic, from the atom to the mind. Some researchers are beginning to explore this idea seriously. In integrated information theory, for example, consciousness is treated as a measurable property of any system that integrates information in a certain way. By that definition, consciousness isn't limited to brains. It could, in principle, exist in stars, galaxies, or even the universe as a whole, in vastly different forms. The more complex the system's ability to integrate information, the richer its consciousness might be. That means you, as a human being, are a highly specialized node in the cosmic network of awareness. Your brain gathers information, compresses it, and reflects it back into the fabric of the universe through perception. Each time you look at the stars, you close the loop between the observer and the observed. The universe sees itself through your eyes. It's humbling to realize that what feels like a private, personal consciousness may be part of a universal process, repeating at every level of scale. The looping patterns that shape your thoughts are echoed in the orbits of planets, the spin of galaxies, and the oscillation of quantum fields. From electrons to neural networks to spiral galaxies, everything moves in cycles: creation and dissolution, expansion and contraction, birth and decay. Time itself may be nothing more than the rhythm of this universal breathing. And if time is rhythmic, then perhaps eternity is simply the stillness between breaths, the point of perfect symmetry where expansion and contraction meet. That stillness could be what underlies all cycles, from the firing of neurons to the heartbeat of stars. It's the quiet equilibrium the universe returns to again and again, the infinite moment hidden beneath all movement. Your consciousness may touch that stillness more often than you realize. In moments of awe, deep focus, or silence, when thought and time seem to dissolve, awareness briefly returns to its timeless source. Neuroscience can't yet explain what happens in those instants, but many people describe them the same way, as if the boundary between self and world disappears and everything becomes one. Perhaps that sensation isn't mystical at all. Maybe it's simply accurate. For a moment, the loop closes completely. Consciousness aligns with the timeless fabric it emerged from, and the illusion of separation vanishes. The universe recognizes itself as a single, unbroken whole. If so, then the great question isn't whether you are stuck in a loop. It's whether you ever truly left it. The loop might not be a trap, but the natural geometry of existence. Everything that is, from the smallest particle to the vastest mind, could be rotating through this same eternal pattern, from unity to differentiation, and back again. The illusion of time allows that pattern to unfold in experience, like a story told frame by frame. To exist in time, then, is to participate in the universe's act of self-discovery. Every conscious being, every flicker of awareness, contributes a new perspective to the infinite whole. We are the universe looping through itself, exploring its own possibilities, each loop slightly different from the last. And yet, through all the motion, something remains unchanged. Beneath the cycles of birth and death, thought and silence, matter and energy, there is a constant, the underlying field that gives rise to both consciousness and cosmos. Physics calls it the quantum vacuum, the zero-point field, the fundamental fabric of reality. It's not empty, it teems with potential, with fluctuations that give birth to everything. It is the background from which universes arise and into which they dissolve. If consciousness is indeed a property of this fabric, then awareness never truly began, and it can never truly end. It exists as potential in every particle, in every fluctuation of space-time. The loop of existence is not something we're trapped in, it's something we are. That idea might sound abstract, but perhaps it's closer to intuition than we think. When you feel a deep connection to nature or sense a profound calm when looking at the night sky, maybe that's the loop recognizing itself. A moment of resonance between your consciousness and the cosmic field that gave rise to it. The mind, in its search for meaning, often wonders what happens after death or before birth. But from the perspective of the timeless universe, those are the same question. The loop doesn't begin or end, it only transforms. Consciousness may reconfigure just as energy and matter do, shifting forms while remaining part of the same eternal whole. In that sense, you have always been part of this universe, not just as matter, not just as energy, but as awareness itself. The atoms in your body were forged in ancient stars, and the consciousness within you may be the universe dreaming of itself, remembering what it has always been. When we turn back from the stars and look inward, the same patterns that shape galaxies seem to echo in the architecture of our own minds. Every thought, emotion, and memory follows cycles, loops that begin, fade, and begin again. The vast rhythm of the universe isn't only written in cosmic light, it's woven into human experience. You can feel it in the pulse of your heart, the rhythm of breath, the rising and falling tides of awareness. Science shows us that the human body is a symphony of cycles. Your heart beats in repeating waves. Your lungs draw and release air in a pattern that never stops until your final breath. Even your cells divide and repair themselves according to biological clocks, molecular loops ticking away in nearly every cell in your body. These circadian rhythms synchronize with the rotation of the Earth, anchoring your sense of day and night, wake and rest. You live quite literally inside a rhythm that began long before you were born. But the most mysterious loops are the ones that happen in your mind. Every moment of thought is not a straight line from cause to effect, but a feedback system. You perceive the world, your brain predicts what should happen next, and those predictions shape what you actually experience. You then react to what you experience, which changes your next prediction. The result is a continuous loop of perception and expectation, a self-correcting dance between reality and imagination. Psychologists call this predictive processing. It's how your mind stays ahead of chaos. Instead of passively observing the world, your brain constantly generates models of it. Guesses about what you're about to see, hear, or feel. Every sensation is compared against those predictions, and the difference, the prediction error, becomes the engine that drives perception forward. You aren't seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the difference between your expectations and what reality provides. This constant adjustment creates the illusion of motion through time. Each thought, each feeling is your mind updating its model of the world moment by moment. It's a process of continuous correction, a living loop of perception that never truly stops. Even when you sleep, the brain keeps running simulations, replaying memories, and reorganizing experience, as if trying to reconcile the story of the self with the data of the day. In this sense, every person lives within a personal time loop, a cycle of interpretation that recreates reality through memory and anticipation. The past shapes how you predict the future, and those predictions determine what you notice in the present. It's not that you're trapped in repetition, but that repetition is the scaffolding of understanding. You see meaning because you've seen patterns before. Neuroscientists have found that when we encounter something truly new, something our brains cannot easily predict. Time seems to slow down. Think of moments of fear, awe, or wonder. When the mind cannot rely on its loop of expectation, it expands perception to gather more data. Time, as you feel it, stretches. Once the event passes and the brain adapts, time returns to its usual rhythm. This shows that the flow of time, as you experience it, is not fixed. It bends to the rhythm of consciousness itself. Your sense of self works the same way. The I that you experience is not a solid thing, but a pattern of continuity, a loop of self-reference. The brain constantly integrates sensations, memories, and expectations into a single narrative. You feel like one person because that narrative is self-consistent, but just like the predictive loop of perception, the self is a feedback system. It is both the storyteller and the story being told. This loop can be seen in the way we think about our lives. You remember who you were, you imagine who you might become, and in between you construct a story of identity that seems to move through time. Yet if you pause and look closely, you might notice that the past only exists as memory, and the future only exists as imagination, both happening now within consciousness. The loop is not between past and future, but between memory and anticipation. Both emerge from the same timeless awareness, feeding each other in a circle that gives the illusion of continuity. Emotion itself operates through loops. Joy and sorrow, excitement and calm are states that rise and fall in waves. The brain regulates emotion through feedback systems between the body and the mind. When you feel anxious, your heart rate increases, sending signals back to your brain, which interprets that heartbeat as confirmation of fear. The body and mind mirror each other, reinforcing the feeling until something interrupts the cycle. A breath, a thought, a change in focus. You might have noticed that when you consciously slow your breathing, your mind often calms in response. That's the loop being gently reprogrammed. Awareness, when applied deliberately, can alter the feedback between brain and body. It's a reminder that the loop isn't a trap. It's something that can be tuned, adjusted, and harmonized. Human behavior also unfolds in cycles. We repeat patterns in relationships, habits, decisions, often without realizing it. These loops of behavior arise because the brain learns by reinforcement. When an action brings reward, the loop strengthens. When it brings pain, the loop weakens, but rarely vanishes entirely. The mind, in its search for stability, gravitates toward familiar patterns, even when those patterns no longer serve us. This is why personal change can feel so difficult. It isn't just breaking a habit, it's reconfiguring the entire feedback system that defines how you relate to the world. But just as the universe evolves through cycles of entropy and renewal, the human mind can evolve through loops of awareness. By observing its own repetition, it gains the power to reshape it. Modern neuroscience is beginning to explore this process under the lens of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself in response to experience. Every time you focus attention, every time you learn something new, your brain subtly reshapes its own circuitry. The loop adjusts. Over time, these small shifts accumulate, creating new pathways of thought and perception. Awareness changes the structure of the mind itself. This suggests that consciousness isn't just caught in the loop, it's the engineer of it. Through reflection, intention, and imagination, awareness can change the rhythm of its own experience. You can alter how time feels, how memories influence you, and how your story unfolds. The loop becomes not a prison, but a creative instrument. There's a deep symmetry in this. The same feedback patterns that govern stars and galaxies also exist in the firing of neurons, the beat of the heart, and the patterns of thought. Everywhere you look, The universe builds complexity through repetition, cycles within cycles, all feeding back into themselves. What we call life might simply be the way the universe stabilizes itself within those loops, keeping change balanced with continuity. Even love follows a kind of loop. When you connect deeply with another person, your emotions synchronize. Heart rates align, breathing patterns mirror, brain waves subtly resonate. Science calls this interpersonal synchrony. Two consciousnesses momentarily fall into rhythm, creating a shared loop of awareness. In those moments, the illusion of separateness softens, and something timeless shines through. A unity that feels older than the individuals experiencing it. Perhaps that's why love, awe, and compassion feel sacred. They are reminders of the deeper symmetry, that every living being is part of the same timeless feedback system. Every connection we form is the universe folding in on itself, experiencing self-awareness through relationship. But not all loops are harmonious. Some trap the mind in recursive thought. Anxiety, obsession, regret, these are feedback systems that have lost equilibrium. The mind rehearses scenarios endlessly, trying to resolve uncertainty it cannot control. The past replays in memory, the future looms in prediction, and awareness becomes caught between them. To escape, the system must reset, often through stillness, acceptance, or surrender. Moments of insight often emerge after such resets. When the loop releases, new patterns become possible. It's as though awareness briefly steps outside its own circuit, glimpsing the timeless space that underlies it. That's where creativity, clarity, and peace arise, not by breaking the loop, but by seeing it clearly. Philosophers have long suggested that self-awareness itself is a kind of loop, the mind observing itself observing. Douglas Hofstadter called this the strange loop, an infinite recursion where identity arises from self-reference. You are both the observer and the observed, the question and the answer. The loop of consciousness generates the feeling of individuality, but the deeper truth may be that individuality is just one perspective within a much larger network of awareness. That's why moments of deep introspection or meditation often feel timeless. When awareness stops chasing its own reflection, when the loop quiets, the distinction between inner and outer, self and world, begins to blur. Time softens. The mind, freed from its predictive cycles, touches something vast and still. Scientists studying meditation have found measurable changes in brain activity during these states. Slowed oscillations, increased coherence, reduced sense of separation. The mind, it seems, can tune itself toward the rhythm of the timeless. What's striking is that this state isn't reserved for mystics or monks. It's part of ordinary human experience, glimpsed in moments of awe, love, and loss, when the boundaries of the self loosen and the world feels both infinite and intimate. These are the cracks in the loop, where light from the timeless shines through. If both consciousness and cosmos operate through cycles of repetition and renewal, then the challenge is not to escape it, but to understand it, to recognize that every breath, every heartbeat, every thought is part of an ancient rhythm that began long before you and will continue long after. When you see your life through that lens, something shifts. The loop no longer feels like confinement, it feels like belonging. You are not moving through time. You are participating in the universe's own pulse, echoing the heartbeat of creation in every moment you're aware. And perhaps in the quiet spaces between thoughts, you can sense that rhythm, a steady, endless pulse that connects everything. It's in you, around you, and beyond you. The same rhythm that shapes galaxies and atoms is the one shaping the story of your life. If we look closely at the human experience of time, we find something paradoxical. The universe, according to physics, may not possess a preferred direction of time. The laws that govern particles, forces, and even the structure of space itself are symmetrical. They work the same forward or backward. Yet we, as conscious beings, feel an unmistakable flow, a current that carries us from what we call past toward what we call future. Why? What makes us feel like we're moving through time when the universe itself might not be? The answer, many scientists believe, begins with entropy, the natural tendency of systems to move from order toward disorder. Entropy increases in one direction, and that gives rise to what we perceive as time's arrow. A glass shatters but doesn't reassemble. A flame burns through fuel but never spontaneously reforms what it consumed. Each of these processes increases the number of ways particles can arrange themselves, and that irreversible change becomes the physical foundation for our sense of the past and future. But here's where it becomes strange. Entropy defines a direction for matter, yet consciousness seems to resist that flow. While the universe expands and cools, awareness observes, remembers, and sometimes even reverses the pull, restoring order through understanding. When you recall a memory or imagine a future event, you create coherence out of chaos, meaning out of randomness. Your brain, an intricate system of over 80 billion neurons, continuously uses energy to resist disorder, to keep its internal loops organized against the natural tide of entropy. This act of remembering is central to your experience of time. Without memory, there would be no sense of a past at all. Each moment would exist in isolation, unconnected to what came before it. The loop of consciousness would collapse into a series of unlinked flashes, awareness without continuity. Memory is what stretches the present into a story. Neuroscience shows that memory is not static storage, but a living process. Each time you recall something, your brain reconstructs it from fragments stored across multiple regions. Sensory details, emotions, contextual clues. It doesn't simply replay a file, it recreates an experience, and in doing so, it slightly changes it. Memories are alive because they're always being rewritten. That means your personal past isn't fixed. It evolves every time you remember it. The past, as you experience it, is a dynamic pattern, another loop of perception and reconstruction. You might think you're recalling a moment from years ago, but in truth, your brain is generating a present version of that moment, influenced by everything you've learned since. The past is not behind you. It's being continually rebuilt right now, inside your living consciousness. This leads to an astonishing implication. The continuity of your life, the sense that you are moving along a timeline, depends on the brains to continually regenerate the illusion of linear flow. Each second feels connected to the last, but beneath that smooth sensation lies a system of discrete loops, perception, reconstruction, and anticipation, cycling many times per second. Your consciousness is like a film projector, creating the illusion of motion from a sequence of still frames. Physics mirrors this illusion. At the smallest scales, time may not be continuous at all. Quantum mechanics suggests that reality itself might emerge in discrete events, flickering states of energy and probability, collapsing into definite outcomes only when observed. Between those events, there is no change, no flow, only potential. In that sense, the timeless loop isn't a metaphor, but a description of how the universe actually operates, flickering between states of being and not being, creation and observation. And somehow, consciousness sits right at the center of that process. Your awareness doesn't just witness time, it generates it through observation. The physicist John Wheeler proposed something called the participatory universe, the idea that reality is not a pre-existing thing, but a network of interactions made real by acts of measurement. In other words, time and matter might emerge only when consciousness participates. If that's true, then the human mind is not just moving through the loop, it's co-creating it. Your perception of a moment helps define that moment. Your awareness anchors it into the sequence of existence. Without observation, there might be no before or after at all, only an uncollapsed field of potentiality. This perspective reshapes how we think about destiny and choice. If time is not a river flowing one way, but a loop of interconnected states, then perhaps everything that has ever happened or will happen already exists within that structure. What changes is not the events themselves, but the position of awareness within the loop, the perspective you inhabit as you move through the field of possibility. Einstein once said that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. According to relativity, time is woven together with space into a single continuum, space-time, and every event within it already exists. You, as a conscious observer, trace one particular path through that continuum, giving the impression of motion. But from a higher dimensional viewpoint, the entire timeline is already laid out, complete and simultaneous. This view, called the block universe theory, suggests that change and motion are artifacts of perception. The loop of consciousness provides the animation. The universe itself is timeless. In this sense, you're not moving through time. Time is moving through you. Awareness gives motion to what is otherwise still. However, physics also offers counterpoints. Quantum theory, particularly in the context of wave function collapse, implies that the future is not fixed, that probabilities resolve only through interaction. So perhaps the loop isn't closed after all. Maybe it's recursive, self-similar but open-ended, evolving as consciousness participates in it. In that view, the universe is not a completed loop, but a living one, a feedback system between awareness and reality, each shaping the other in an eternal conversation. And within that cosmic feedback, the human experience becomes a microcosm. Every decision you make, every thought you hold, subtly alters your internal world, and perhaps, in ways we don't yet understand, ripples through the larger fabric of existence. Some physicists, like Roger Penrose, have even speculated that consciousness itself may arise from quantum effects within neurons, suggesting that awareness could influence matter at the most fundamental level. If that's true, then each act of perception might literally reshape the field of possibility around it. This intertwining of consciousness and time can be seen in how memory and anticipation are constructed in the brain. When you imagine the future, you activate nearly the same neural circuits as when you recall the past. The brain uses the same structures, primarily the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, to simulate both what has happened and what might happen. This means that your sense of the future is built from memory. You project what you already know into what you expect. From this, the loop becomes even clearer. Memory feeds imagination. Imagination reshapes perception. Perception updates memory. The system closes in on itself, not as a trap, but as a mechanism for continuity. Consciousness experiences time not because it travels through it, but because it loops through the relationship between what was, what is, and what could be. This relationship also gives rise to meaning. Meaning, in a neurological sense, is the recognition of pattern, the alignment between expectation and perception. When you understand something, your brain's prediction matches reality, and that resonance produces a feeling of clarity, even pleasure. When you're confused, the loop breaks and your brain races to repair it. Learning, curiosity, creativity, all are expressions of the mind's desire to complete its own loops of understanding. But there's another layer to this pattern, one that connects deeply to our emotional lives. When we experience déjà vu, for example, it feels as if a moment has already happened. Some researchers believe this occurs when the brain's memory and perception loops briefly fall out of sync, when the system mistakenly labels a present event as familiar before fully processing it. The sensation is eerie because it exposes the loop itself. You catch a glimpse of the machinery behind time. Similarly, in moments of crisis or ecstasy, time can seem to slow or even stop. This distortion often occurs when the brain releases surges of neurotransmitters, especially adrenaline or dopamine, heightening focus and awareness. In those moments, consciousness expands its bandwidth, processing more data per unit of clock time. To the observer, the loop feels elongated. The external world moves slower because the internal rhythm has changed. What this reveals is profound. Time is not an external constant. It's an emergent property of perception. Each conscious being experiences a unique rhythm of time, shaped by emotion, attention, and memory. From that perspective, the timeless loop is not something you're inside. It's something you're creating. Even the concept of aging may be tied to this internal feedback. Biological aging follows cycles of cell repair and decay. But psychological aging, the feeling of growing older, is influenced by the density of new experiences. In childhood, when every moment is new, the brain forms rich, detailed memories, making time feel expansive. As life becomes more routine, fewer novel memories are encoded and the loop compresses. Time seems to speed up because fewer distinct loops are being formed. This shows that the passage of time is deeply subjective. The same hour can feel endless or fleeting, depending on how consciousness interacts with it. The loop stretches and contracts, not in the universe, but within awareness. The loop isn't a limitation, it's the structure of experience itself. Without it, there would be no continuity, no story, and no self. The key isn't to escape it, but to understand how it moves and how we move within it. The human experience, at its core, may be the universe's way of perceiving its own unfolding. Through consciousness, the cosmos reflects on itself, exploring the infinite patterns hidden within its own feedback loops. Every thought you have, every emotion you feel, might be a microcosmic echo of the larger cycle, the endless dialogue between order and entropy, memory and anticipation, being and becoming. If that's true, then you're not merely a passenger within the flow of time. You are part of the mechanism that gives time its rhythm. The loop is not something outside you, it is you. The very structure of awareness mirrors the symmetry of the universe, eternally oscillating between stillness and motion, presence and possibility. And in that symmetry, you may find the most profound realization of all. The loop is not a trap to escape, but a truth to awaken to. Tonight, we've traveled through the mysterious architecture of time, through loops of perception, matter, and consciousness itself. We began by looking outward at the universe's great cycles, and ended by looking inward at the repeating patterns within the human mind. And now, we arrive at the final turn of the loop, where science, philosophy, and self-awareness converge. Throughout this journey, one question has quietly followed us. If everything we experience is part of a repeating cycle, what does that say about who we are? Are we simply passengers within the cosmic machinery of time, or are we the mechanism itself, awareness becoming aware of its own reflection? To understand this, we have to return to the foundation, the way consciousness and time are interwoven. Every moment you experience arises from the brain's interaction with the physical world. The firing of neurons, the processing of sensory input, the reconstruction of memory. But all of that happens within a framework of prediction and feedback. The brain doesn't move linearly through time. It cycles, reinterprets, and self-corrects. Awareness emerges not from progression, but from recurrence. This cyclical nature isn't limited to biological systems. On the quantum level, particles oscillate, fields vibrate, and even time itself may loop through interference patterns. The heartbeat of the universe seems to be repetition, not in the sense of exact copies, but of continual renewal. Stars are born, burn, collapse, and are reborn through the same matter that once formed others. Energy transforms, but never disappears. Consciousness, too, might follow this rhythm, continually reorganizing itself into new forms, new observers, new perspectives. From this point of view, death and birth lose their boundaries. They become transitions within a single continuum of awareness, phases in the universal cycle. The consciousness that looks out from your eyes might not be an isolated entity, but a temporary configuration of something eternal, something that endlessly reorganizes itself into new observers. Each life becomes a single turn of the wheel, a reflection of the same underlying awareness, exploring itself through infinite perspectives. Science doesn't yet have a clear framework to explain this, but hints are appearing. Studies of near-death experiences, psychedelic states, and deep meditation all suggest that consciousness can exist in altered modes that do not obey our normal perception of time. People describe timelessness, unity, and an overwhelming sense that awareness itself continues independent of the body's clock. Whether these states are purely neural or something deeper remains debated, but the consistency of these reports across cultures and history is striking. In neuroscience, we see that consciousness depends on oscillations, waves of electrical activity that synchronize different regions of the brain. These waves generate coherent awareness from billions of individual signals. When synchronization breaks down, consciousness fades, as in deep anesthesia or coma. But when the oscillations align, the brain forms a unified field of awareness. This rhythmic structure is a loop. Information flowing between regions, feeding back and stabilizing itself. You are, in a literal sense, made of rhythms. Now imagine those rhythms not as isolated electrical patterns, but as part of a larger network, a cosmic feedback loop that spans space and time. Every thought, every perception might be a ripple within that vast structure. The universe could be seen as one enormous mind, self-observing through the countless patterns it generates. What you call your consciousness could simply be a localized pattern within that infinite system, an eddy in the ocean of awareness. This idea isn't mystical. It's compatible with emerging theories in physics and information science. The holographic principle, for example, suggests that the entire universe might be a projection of information encoded on a vast, higher dimensional surface. Every point in space contains the information of the whole. If that's true, then awareness might be the universe reading itself, each conscious being a point where the whole becomes self-aware. Some physicists even suggest that reality itself is a computation, a vast informational process running on the fabric of space-time. If that's the case, then loops of feedback aren't just metaphors. They are the architecture of existence. Consciousness could be what happens when the informational loop becomes self-referential, when the system not only processes data but becomes aware that it's doing so. In that view, time is not something external, but an emergent property of information flow. The future doesn't exist until consciousness moves to perceive it. The past persists only as stored information, constantly rewritten by memory. The present, this vivid, living moment, is the only reality, perpetually refreshed by the loop of observation. You can experience this directly. When you rest in pure awareness, letting go of past and future, something extraordinary happens. Time seems to vanish. The mind becomes still, yet completely awake. In that stillness, perception doesn't stop. It deepens. You realize that everything you experience, from the sound of your breath to the beating of your heart, is happening now, and has always been happening now. The past and future are stories told within the eternal present. This insight aligns with what both ancient philosophies and modern science have discovered. In relativity, there is no universal now. Each observer has their own slice of time, defined by their motion through space-time. The present moment, then, is not fixed. It's relative, different for each point of awareness. Yet subjectively, you only ever experience one moment, this one. All of existence, from your birth to your death, unfolds within it. The loop begins and ends here. If the universe is truly timeless at its foundation, then perhaps consciousness is the mechanism that experiences that timelessness as flow. Awareness breaks eternity into moments, the way a prism divides white light into colors. The mind moves through its own projections, creating the illusion of progression. But beneath it all, the totality remains whole, unmoving, complete. So are you stuck in a timeless loop? Or are you simply part of a vast, self-sustaining rhythm that never began and will never end? Science doesn't yet offer a final answer. And maybe that's the point. The mystery of time may not be something to solve, but something to experience fully. Because every second of your life, every thought that arises, every breath you take, is part of that same endless pulse. When you see this clearly, the anxiety of time begins to fade. You stop fearing the future or clinging to the past, because you recognize that neither truly exists apart from now. The loop is not confinement, it's continuity. You are not trapped in repetition. You are participating in creation, moment by moment. Consider how the universe began. According to cosmology, everything once existed in a state of unimaginable density and temperature, the singularity. Then, in an instant, expansion began. Space and time unfolded, carrying galaxies and stars into being. But from a timeless perspective, that expansion might still be happening. Everywhere, always. The Big Bang didn't happen long ago. It's happening right now, at every point in space, in every particle that continues to expand outward. Consciousness may be the same way. It didn't begin at birth, and it may not end at death. It's the ongoing expansion of awareness, the unfolding of the universe through perception. You are a wave in that expansion, a pattern within an infinite rhythm, experiencing itself as human. This perspective doesn't diminish individuality, it deepens it. Every life, every moment, contributes to the total experience of the cosmos. Your joys, your struggles, your questions, all are expressions of the universe trying to understand itself. When you look at the night sky, you are literally the universe looking back at itself. Through billions of years of evolution, through endless loops of matter and thought. So if you ever feel lost in time, caught between yesterday and tomorrow, remember that everything you've ever been and ever will be already exists in the infinite now. The loop isn't something to escape, it's something to wake up within. Each breath is both a beginning and an ending. Each heartbeat marks another cycle of the cosmos within you. And when you close your eyes tonight as the world fades into stillness, you'll return once again to that timeless awareness, the space between thoughts, between dreams, where the loop rests and renews itself. The body sleeps, but consciousness continues its quiet rhythm, preparing to awaken again in a new moment, a new loop, a new dawn. Thank you for joining me tonight and for exploring this mystery, the timeless rhythm that holds everything together. Whether you see it as science, spirit, or something beyond both, the truth remains. You are part of the universe's own awareness, endlessly unfolding, forever returning to itself. You are not moving through time. Time is moving through you. Good night.